Uh, Good morning, friends. Good morning, students. Let's begin with the topic what we left yesterday. Uh, Yesterday, we were discussing task, process, and threads. The difference between these, like a process and threads, right? Again, the structure of process, threads, again the various states of the process, right? We discussed. Next, coming to the uh, multiprocessing and multitasking. So multiprocessing and the multitasking. In basic, we say okay. Basically, we say multitasking. Like if a system is performing more number of tasks or more number of jobs or more number of functions at a time, then we say it as multitasking, right? So during same point of time and number of tasks are being completed are being executed, then it is called as multitasking. The same thing for multiprocessing, more number of processing are executing are getting executed concurrently, right? Or at the same point of time, then we say it as multiprocessing. The ability to execute multiple processors simultaneously is referred as multiprocessing. Systems which are capable of performing multiprocessing are known as multiprocessor systems. Multiprocessor systems possess multiple CPUs and can execute multiple process simultaneously. So he says multiprocessor, right? Systems possess multiple CPUs, multiprocessor. Okay, we are not telling about the process. Multiprocessor systems. Nothing but a system consists of more number of CPUs. And it is called as multiprocess and can execute multiple processors simultaneously, right? So using multiple processors can be executed. The ability of the operating system to have multiple programs in memory which are ready for execution is referred as multi-programming. So this is multi-programming. In a uniprocessor system, nothing but only one processor system, it is not possible to execute multiple processors simultaneously. Multitasking refers to the ability of an operating system to hold multiple processors in memory and switch the processor from executing one process to another process. This is called as multitasking, right? Observe here. Multitasking involves context switching and the context saving and context retrieval. Very simple. What's the meaning of this context switching? Right, again the context saving and context retrieval. So just observe this diagram, right? So there are two processors, process 1 and process 2, right? And so the process 1 is running during this particular time period. The process 1 is running, the process 1 is running, right? And uh, during this particular time period, the process 1 is waits in ready queue and the process 2 is idle and it is running next, and the process 1 is idle and here the it is in the wait in ready queue and running. So the meaning is very simple. The context switching, uh, the context is nothing but the resources allocated for a particular process, right? So here the context switching is what, assigning the CPU from one process to the another process. Meantime, the context, nothing but the resources allocated for for our resources allocated must be switched from one process to another process. That is that is given here the context is, saving. Nothing but if the processor is uh, shifting from one process to another process, then it has to save the context with respect to the process one before it gets into the process 2, right? So for that it has to save the resources of the process 1, that is context saving, And the context retrieval is what? Whenever there is a continuous uh, transferring or the context switching, then the context retrieval is needed. For example, process 2 is running and the processor wants to jump to process 1. Then it has to get the context which have been stored or which have been reserved temporarily have to be which have been stored temporarily have to be retrieved. Okay, so that is the context retrieval. So the meaning, this is the diagram. Observe here how two processes are getting executed right in a given point of time, and the processor is uh, getting are having context switching there, right? The act of switching CPU among the uh, processors or changing the current execution context is known as the context switching. The act of saving the current context, that is details like register details, memory details, system resources, usage details, again execution details, etc. For the currently running process at the time of CPU switching is known as the context saving. And the process of retrieving the saved context details of a process which is going to be executed due to the CPU switching is known as the context retrieval. So you can expect some quiz kind questions on this. What is context retrieval? What is context saving? Again, the context switching, right? Yes. Next one, types of multi-tasking. Depending on how the task process execution switching act is implemented, multitasking can be classified into the first one, cooperative multitasking. Cooperative multitasking is the most primitive form of multitasking in which a task or process gets a chance to execute only when the currently executing task or process voluntarily relinquishes the CPU. That is a cooperative multitasking. Nothing but there are two processes. One process is getting executed, and the process 2 is waiting for the CPU attention, right? So the process 1, what it does, voluntarily, right, voluntarily by itself, if it gives out the CPU time for the process 2, then it is called as the cooperative multitasking. Nothing but here the mutual understanding of process uh, will happen, right? So mutually they get the time of CPU. So that's what it is said, cooperative multitasking. Cooperative multitasking is the most primitive form of the multitasking in which a task or the process gets a chance to execute only when the currently executing task or the process voluntarily relinquishes the CPU. Voluntarily, it will give out the time of the CPU, right? So that it can use for itself and get the work done. In this method, any task or process can avail the CPU as much time as it wants. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಈ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಅಥವಾ ಟಾಸ್ಕ್ can avail the CPU time as much time as it wants. ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ there is no time restriction, right? So if and only if the task or process gives the CPU voluntarily, then only the next process or the task can make use of CPU's time. So otherwise, it will be of its own. The CPU will be of that task or process own. So that's what it is said. There is no particular time, and it can avail the CPU as much time as it wants. On the. Since this type of implementation involves the mercy of the tasks each other for getting the CPU time for execution, it is known as cooperative multitasking. If the currently executing task is non-cooperative, the other task may have to wait for long time to get the CPU. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವೆರಡು cooperative ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ another task ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಈಗ ಎರಡು ಟಾಸ್ಕ್ ರನ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ, ಒನ್ ಟಾಸ್ಕ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ರೈಟ್? ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ not ready to give up the CPU for the task 2 or the process 2, ಅವಾಗ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? process 2 has to wait for very long time ಅಥವಾ wait till the task 1 is complete or completed, right? Yes. So that is multitasking, cooperative. Next, preemptive multitasking. Preemptive multitasking ensures that every task or process gets a chance to ensure. It's like a what we can say, a round robin kind, right? So every task make sure that the CPU will make, our operating system will make sure that like every task or process will have will have a chance to execute. When and how much time a process gets is dependent on the implementation of the preemptive scheduling. As the name indicates, in preemptive multitasking, the currently running task or process is preempted to give a chance to other task or process to execute. The preemption of task may be based on time slots or the task or the process priority. So ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿಯಾನೆ depending on the time slots or the priority, preemption will work or the multitasking will work, right? Yes, as the name indicates, the preemptive multitasking, the currently running task process is preempted to give a chance to other task or the process to execute. The preemption of the task may be based on time slots or task process priority. Next one, non-preemptive multitasking. The process or task which is currently given the CPU time is allowed to execute until it terminates or enters the blocked or wait state or waiting for an IO. So the cooperative and non-preemptive multitasking differs in their behavior when they are in the blocked or the wait state. So the non-preemptive in non-preemptive multitasking, the process of the task which is currently given the CPU time is allowed to execute until it terminates or enters the blocked or wait state. So it is almost not almost it is slightly same as that of cooperative only, because if a task or process is not cooperative or it wants to execute its own data or the program, right, it doesn't want to give up the CPU for other tasks, then uh, that is a non-cooperative, right? So here the in the non-preemptive, the CPU is allowed to use the CPU, sorry, the process is the task or process is allowed to make use of the CPU time, right? So till it terminates or till it enters the blocked or wait state. That is a non-preemptive multitasking. In CO operative multitasking, okay, in cooperative multitasking, the currently executing process of the task need not relinquish the CPU when it enters the blocked or the wait state, waiting for an IO or a shared resource access or an event to occur. Whereas in the non-preemptive multitasking, the currently executing task relinquishes the CPU when it waits for an IO. So next about the task communication, right? How task tasks do communicate uh, between each other. In a multitasking system, multiple tasks or processes run concurrently, and each process may or may not interact between. Based on the degree of interaction, the process of the task running on an OS are classified as cooperating processes, like again the competing processes. In cooperating processes, in the cooperating interaction model, one process requires the inputs from other process to complete its execution. In the competing process, the competing process do not share anything among themselves, but they share the system resources. But here in the cooperative, they share uh, among themselves, but here they don't. The competing processes compete for the system resources such as file, display device, again the IO devices, etc. Again including memory also. The cooperating process exchanges information and communicate through the following methods. So how do communicate is cooperation through sharing, cooperation through communication, exchange data through some shared resources, and here no data is shared between the processes, but they communicate for execution synchronization. The mechanism through which tasks or processes communicate each other is known as the interprocess or the task communication, right? So IPC, it is very important, this particular concept IPC. IPC is essential for process coordination. The various types of IPC mechanisms adapted to a process are kernel dependent. They are explained like this. IPC mechanism, the first one is shared memory, right? So interprocess communication using the shared memory. Processors share some area of the memory to communicate among them. So observe here the process 1 and the process 2, and they use same memory, and that memory is shared. Okay, they can use to store the data temporarily, or to fetch the data, right, to store anything or to fetch anything, and that is common for both the processor 1 as well as to process 2. uh, Information to be communicated by the process is returned to the shared memory area. Processes which require this information can read the same form of the shared memory area. The implementation of shared memory is kernel dependent. Again, it is said as kernel dependent, right? Next, different mechanisms are adopted by different kernels for implementing this. A few among are as follows: pipes and memory mapped objects. Pipes. Pipe is a section of the shared memory used by processors for communicating. Pipes allow the client-server architecture. Right, so a process which creates a pipe is known as pipe server, and a process which which connects to a pipe is known as pipe client. So already you know the client-server architecture, the client-server model, and the process which creates pipe is known as the pipe server, and the process which connects to that particular pipe is called as a pipe client. A pipe can be considered as a medium for information flow, and has two conceptual ends. The It can be unidirectional or the bidirectional. Uh, a unidirectional pipe allows the process connecting at one end of the pipe to write to the pipe, and process connected at the other end of the pipe to read the data, whereas a bidirectional pipe allows both reading from both ends, reading and writing, right? Nothing but using a single end, we can do the both operation, right? The unidirectional pipe, just observe process 1 in the process 2, it is one from one end only write operation is allowed, and from one another end it read operation is allowed, but in the bidirection, right? So both is possible. The implementation of pipes is OS dependent. Microsoft Windows desktop operating system support two types of pipes for inter-process communication, namely anonymous pipes and named pipes. Named pipes. The anonymous pipes are unnamed unidirectional pipes used for data transfer between two processors, and a named pipe is a named unidirectional or bidirectional pipe for data exchange between processors. The process which creates a named pipe is known as pipe server, and the process which connects the named pipe is called as pipe client. Okay, same as earlier one. With the named pipes, any process uh, can act as both client and server, allowing point-to-point communication. Okay, here, okay, the case is anyone can work as like a server or client. There is no restriction, right? Any process can act as both client and server. Named pipes can be used for communicating between processors running on the same machine, or between processors running on different machines connected to a network. Memory mapped objects, the second one. First one IPC, second one is memory mapped objects. Memory mapped object is a shared memory technique adopted by certain real-time operating systems for allocating a shared block of memory which can be accessed by multiple processors simultaneously. Very simple. A memory is permitted or dedicated, and the same memory is shared among different processes. In this approach, a mapping object is created, and physical storage for it is reserved and committed. A process can map the entire committed physical area or a block of it to its virtual address space. All read and write operation to this virtual address space by a process is directed to its committed physical area. Any process which wants to share data with other processes can map the physical address area of the mapped object to its virtual memory space and use it for sharing the data. So it can be depicted using this diagram. Observe the concept of memory mapped object is shown below. The process 1 and the process 2. Right. So this is the physical memory. Right. And each process has got its own mapped virtual memory. The memory mapped object is mapped into process 1 virtual address space. Map to virtual memory. Again, the map to virtual memory. The memory mapped object is mapped into process 2 virtual address space. So it has got its own virtual address space, arbitrary location. Some arbitrary locations are given. Here also arbitrary location are given. Process 1's virtual memory space, process 2's virtual memory space, right? This is how the memory mapped object works. Next, IPC mechanism, message passing. Message passing is asynchronous or asynchronous information exchange mechanism for inter-process thread communication. The major difference between shared memory and message passing technique is through shared memory, lots of data can be shared, whereas only limited amount of information data is passed through message passing. Message passing is relatively fast and free from the synchronization overheads compared to the shared memory. Based on the message passing operation between the processors, message passing is classified into message queue and mailbox. Again, signaling. First one is message queue. Message queue, process which wants to talk to another process posts the message to first in first out queue called message queue, which stores the message temporarily in a system defined memory object to pass it to the desired process. Messages are sent and received through send and receive methods. Nothing but name of the process to which the message is to be sent. Again, the receive name of the process from which the message is to be received. Right. So here in the message queue, very simple. If one process wants to communicate with another one, what does that message is sent to a queue that acts as first in first out, called as message queue, right? So that is one memory space that stores the data temporarily or the message temporarily. That is defined by the memory object, and it will pass that one to the desired process or the destination process, we can say. You can observe process 1 and the process 2 send a message. This is a message queue, and it follows some mechanisms and will forward or direct that particular message to the process 2. The messages are exchanged through a message queue. The implementation of the message queue send and receive methods are OS kernel dependent. Okay, it is here also the process is this particular complete process is kernel independent, OS kernel independent. Next one, mailbox. So just you can observe here uh, the concept of mailbox, right? So here we have one task. What does it will post or it will put a message in one particular location. The task or the processes which need that particular message can access. Very simple. Uh, Nothing but uh, mailbox is a special implementation of message queue, usually used for one-way communication. Only a single message is exchanged through mailbox, whereas message queue can be used for exchanging multiple messages. One task or the process creates a mailbox. That is, other task or the process can subscribe to this mailbox for getting message notification. The implementation of the mailbox is OS kernel dependent. The micro C or the OS2 RTOS implements mailbox as a mechanism for inter-task communication. Next, signaling. Signals are used for an asynchronous notification mechanism. The signal mainly used for execution synchronization of task or the process task. Signals do not carry any data and are not queued. The implementation of signals is OS kernel dependent, and examples VS Works, RTOS kernel implements signals for interprocess communication. Next, IPC mechanism, remote procedure call, and sockets. Remote procedure call is the interprocess communication mechanism used by a process to call a procedure of another process running on the same CPU or on a different CPU which is interconnected in a network. For example, I have two processors. One process is running. Process one is running in one computer. Take it as CPU1. Another process is running in CPU2. Right. So the process one wants some work done, right? Some task done. So what it does, it will request a remote procedure, or it will call that remote procedure nothing but that procedure stored in the CPU2, right? So it will execute and get the work done, and this mechanism is called as remote procedure call. So here the processors might be stored in a single CPU, or within a single CPU, or might be in different CPUs. In the object-oriented language terminology, remote procedure call is also known as a remote invocation or remote method invocation (RMI). The CPU or the process containing the procedure which needs to be invoked remotely is known as server. Next, the CPU or the process which initiates an RPC, that is a remote procedure call request, is known as client. In order to make the remote procedure call communication compatible across all platforms, it should stick onto certain standard formats. Interface definition language ideal defines the interfaces for RPC. Microsoft Interface Definition Language (MITL) is the ideal, that is interface definition language implementation from Microsoft for all Microsoft platforms, and the RPC communication can be either synchronous or asynchronous. So the concept of remote procedure call for IPC. Okay, so over the network. Okay, if they are if two processors are running at two different CPUs, then we can say this processors running on different CPUs which are network. Process one and the process two, and process two is having procedure, and the process wants to execute that procedure for its own task. So what it does, it will request that CPU within that process to execute the procedure and get the result done, or get the work done. And here, in this case, this CPU is called as client, and this CPU is called as server. That's it, right? But if it is within the CPU, just observe, there is no network, but it is within the CPU, and two processors are communicating to execute a remote procedure, right? So like this. Next, about sockets. Sockets are used for RPC, remote procedure call communication. Socket is a logical endpoint in a two-way communication link between two applications running on a network. A port number is associated with a socket so that the network layer of the communication channel can deliver the data to the designated application. Sockets are of different types, namely internet sockets, again the Unix sockets. The internet sockets work on internet communication protocol like TCP, IP, or the UDP. You TCP, IP, UDP in your data communication are the communication protocols sent by INET, right? Just observe, it's a logical endpoint in a two-way communication link between two applications running on a network. It's a logical, not physical, logical endpoint called as sockets. INET sockets are classified as stream sockets and datagram sockets. The stream sockets are connection oriented, and they use TCP to establish a reliable connection, and the datagram sockets rely on UDP for establishing a connection, right? Yes. So for today's class, this is enough. And next class, in tomorrow's class, we'll discuss right? The coming topics, task synchronization and right. Yes, that's it for today. And for your internals, third module, sorry, fourth module, and whatever the portion I cover till tomorrow from fifth module. ಈಗಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ, ಫೋರ್ತ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಫಿಫ್ತ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ ನಾ ಎಷ್ಟು ತನಕ ಕವರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ನಾಳೆ ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಕ್ವಿಸ್ ಅಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಟೈಪ್ಸ್ ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ರೈಟ್. ಎಸ್, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.